Cameras, lights. Thanks, team, for another great show. I'll see you all backstage.
This is Designed to Change, Backstage Conversations.
All right, Mehrad, welcome back to the backstage area. How do you feel right now?
Great. Calm.
Yeah.
Excited also because you have this interesting culture analyzer on screen for me.
A little provocation of an event that, happening in less than 5 weeks, I see here on your website. And where the cultural headline, of this event. First of all, let me ask you, because I just took one of the events out of the 150 that you guys are doing at the Conduit, and decided to run a quick event culture analysis on it, which is something that we now do to take a closer look at snapshots of events to get a better understanding of the thinking behind it, but also develop these impact metrics more specifically and create language around how to speak about the culture of an event, to equip event owners and event designers to have tangible language to speak about. But what was your first reaction when you kind of looked at something like this? Just asking for your instinctive reaction.
I mean, I see graphs, I see data percentages. I cannot wait to explore this with you. I had no background of what or what this stems from. So all ears.
Yeah. And I think that's the whole dynamic, I think, of what is now possible if you look at the petri dish of events, right? So the ability to dissect behavior change in a much more tangible way, based on the fact that the experience, I think you said it so nicely in our onstage part, right? The lived experience and the expertise that sits in the community of facilitators and people that own events and design events. I think because we get to hang out with these people all the time, and we have conversations with them, like with you, and when you talked about AI for good, I would also recommend to listen to an episode we did with Fred Werner from the ITU United Nations, who they host this AI for good event in Geneva in July every year. And funnily enough, there also our paths crossed when I was in middle school and he was in elementary school at the International School in Manila, because we happened to have lived that shared experience as sons of expats who lived in the Philippines during a similar period back in the 1980s. And the gaps in the conversations and what you experience over and across, I think, are fascinating and something that creates a shared language, right, for a way to speak about things. Back to your realities, Merat, of you've just sat through your first podcast, right? I can tell you have that. I forget what the English name is, but pipi langkous is what we call her in Dutch. This attitude of, I've never done this before, so I think I can do it.
That's how I navigate through life, and it's
right.
rewarding plenty of time. So
yeah. And I had to think of that as you mentioned this event in Sweden, because she's the original Swedish children's series, I think, that many kids find inspiring, because Pippi Longstockings, I think she's called in English, has this attitude of, I've never done it before, but I think I can do it. And I think that's what it takes to really break the barriers of a lived experience, like you mentioned, where you were being facilitated and experienced what it was like in a group of people who went through the shared experience. And then your ambition of wanting to be the facilitator, which you've grown over time to really practice, I think, as a practice. But then now, becoming an event owner, which some have told us is probably, next to being a parent, one of the most difficult jobs on the planet, because you are, curating and collaborating with a group of people, a village, as you called it, who pull off events. And then you guys do 150 of them a year.
Yes, we do
That sounds
150
like a real,
production. Yes. It's a mean, lean team. So we do 150 program events, and then that's translates on average to about three a week. So every Monday, every Tuesday, and then one more. Then we have all the community gatherings. So the climate community, they meet religiously every Friday. They sit in a circle, and some incredible collaborations have come out of that.
hmm,
The sustainable fashion community, the B Corp community, the health community, and the list goes on. Um, and then we have four conferences every year. So the conferences are the most externally facing productions at the Conduit, where it's everything we do on steroids and at its best. So
okay.
these are kind of full day conferences that focus on specific industries or topics. So um, we had, for example, the first one was on the insurance sector, which you can put it into the highly traditionally, I would say, because not anymore, but insurance, as soon as you mention the word, people roll their eyes and get fall asleep out of boredom. So, but
It's a
it's a
mitigation
boring but
thing, right?
important category right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we managed to have a conference where everyone stayed until the very last minute. And that's 150 people in the room that didn't want to leave until the very end.
Wow.
Then Climate and the Future of Health, which is powered by the Wellcome Trust. The Wellcome Trust is a £5 billion think tank in the UK. And
Hmm.
they're now really focusing at the intersection of climate and health and how they impact each other.
Yeah.
Uh, with some other partners, we're going to do one on sports and impact at the Aston Villa Stadium this year, which is going to be quite exciting. And the Resilient Cities Forum. That's where we invite 50 city leaders from around the world, get them in a room, put them on around tables, and have them exchange and discuss best practices with the view to figure out what the next decade of urban resilience looks like. So these are just kind of a few to mention of everything that happens at the Conduit. We have Malala Yousafzai coming back in a couple of weeks as well, which I'm quite excited to talk about a film her fund has enabled. So that is our world all the time, around the clock. And I'm
Are
privileged.
there any, I'm curious to ask, besides these, I mean, you have plenty of events to go to in your own communities, but besides these events, do you find the time or energy to jump out of the pan sometimes and go to events from completely different organizers and different spaces to get inspired or to look what they're doing? And if so, has there been, like what events maybe stood out to you that you recently went to where you go like, that's interesting. I haven't seen that before. Or is there anything that you feel is good to share with our community of event designers?
Well, I think you know what's the first one I'm going to mention, and that's the FBN Next Gen Summit. So this kind of back and forth between the Conduit and FBN actually constantly inspires me. Um, and it was the first Next Gen Summit in 8 years where I had no role, not a speech,
Mm,
not a session to facilitate or moderate or anything. No contribution. I was literally just there as a
a
member,
real participant.
like the first time. And I found that very refreshing. I actually was, I mentioned it to a number of my FBN friends. It's like, I am so excited just to be and
Just to be a part, just to be in it.
all into it. So that was great because I think was it Harry Styles who talked about like he went to a concert in Rio anonymously and he's like, wow, like this
So
is
that's
giving
what it's
so
like.
many ideas. Like it's so nice to be off stage and just on the other. And I think it's needed. Like it's good to have that once in a while. But yeah, I think as a participant in the Next Gen Summit in Malaysia, I was just seeing things from a very different angle, also because I'm now working in this field. and paying attention to all the details, and you just see things from a different lens.
Yeah.
So as an observer, I really enjoyed that. How the Asian host Next Gen committee just owned the event and their personalities just poured through every section.
Yeah.
There it was in the opening where they had a whole section on teaching all these international guests about Manglish or Singlish, like
Yeah.
a few slangs, local slangs and lingos, which I, for one, was repeating for the whole 3 days. Like, lola, with like you say wa, and how do you call it, like le and lo.
Yeah.
Uh, they just did a brilliant job setting the tone, and everyone relaxed. And them putting in all this personality brought out everyone else's, and it
Yeah.
created that sense of relaxation, but also everyone showed up fully with their full presence and their full personalities. And I really appreciated that. I hadn't seen that often.
And I think that's such a powerful um, gift as well, right? To be able to receive a conference as it's deploying and mostly as it's intended, but also with its serendipities that you can't predict because it is an organic thing that happens only when people do get together, right? And you then have to, yeah, observe it and I don't know if you need to ring fence it or, but the petri dish is a cherished one, right? The petri dish in which you immerse yourself during an event is such a precious thing where people commit all of their time and their effort and their attention, hopefully, right? Which most people intend when they go to an event, I think. But also sometimes, they get disappointed by, many events out there are full of distractions that cause the bubble to burst, right? The bubble that you want to be immersed in, or the petri dish immersion you want to have, you went for, needs to be um, very carefully um, manipulated or held up in such a way that the bubble doesn't burst. And I think it's a very delicate shared experience that I think the expertise on the one side can bring a lot, but as you said, the culture of, I can fully appreciate, Malaysia. We do a lot of work in Singapore, Malaysia, also East Malaysia and Sabah and Sarawak recently, where that is such a precious um, space where you can,
Absolutely. And as you say, like obviously there's a professional team from FBN International. We have our brilliant academic director, Emanuela Rondi from Italy. And as I said, it takes a village. There's so many people involved.
yeah,
But this just really shined through. It also has done in past summits as well. But as I said, with this lens on, it just kind of hit a different spot for me. And I was like, oh wow, like there's so much character here. And it's all done voluntarily, which is what was is so admirable for me. And because it also
mm,
FPI, it's a regional chapter. So even though we were in Malaysia, the committees from Indonesia, Thailand, Myanmar, and a few other countries. But it actually makes me think in true backstage fashion, Ruud.
mm,
I think a word that we haven't touched on in our conversation yet is
yeah,
and everything we're talking about. I think your question about what's the hardest part of putting on an event and this topic now of setting the stage, the code of conduct we talked about, the Asian next gen starting with the Manglish in this English. All of that, I think, is towards extending and building and maintaining the trust of the audience
yeah,
and the participants.
yeah,
And I think that is also something I hold very dearly. And I'm just constantly observing and studying to see, okay, what breaks it, what sets it up, and what can protect it, right?
yeah, yeah.
So that came to my mind. That's I think is crucial and probably the red string across these few things we talked about.
I love that because um, just to mirror that, the last program in February which was the inaugural program of a new program that we host around this book, right? The Design to Change book. It's a program called the EDC Trusted Advisor Program. And it talks specifically, and it is a 3-day plus 6 months immersion program around trusted advisorship and trust, and what are the elements and how does that work, especially when it relates to event design and event ownership, and its fragility, but also its your abilities that if you have, the shared experience and, the expertise to set it up in the right way, which involves a lot of things like the facilitation that you mentioned, but also, the hospitality, the culture you set, the values you imbue, all of those things that are, they're so hard to write down on the one side, although you should, right? You have to be very intentional about those things, and you have to design for those to happen. Design guidelines, having clarity about the behavior changes, knowing what the deltas are. By being super specific in your sheet music, so to say, allows you to improvise on top and really find, those magical moments which rest on a very solid foundation of trust, right? And because it's so fragile, the ability to erode it or not set it up properly or forget elements because you've just done it so often, are very specifically present. They are absolutely there.
Yes.
And I really,
What helps with that in terms of the gaze is I look at events and participants from a lens of stewardship, right?
yeah,
Because and that's from my experience at FBN, like in family business, it holds true that you're a steward. You're not, maybe people call you the owner, but ultimately you're stewards of the family business until you hand it to the next generation.
yeah,
But also in the conduits communities, leading a community leader is a steward of that community.
yeah,
So I transfer that gaze also to events and seeing the people's investment and trust into showing up, seeing myself as a steward of that. It's like, okay, well, now let's make sure that they have an incredible experience or conversation or whatever the goal is. So that also helps me to keep things into perspective for myself and then channel it to any other parties involved.
awesome. I think on that bombshell of stewardship and trust, we're going to end this backstage conversation. Mehrad, thank you so much for hanging out with us and our listeners. If you have questions to Mehrad, may we share your LinkedIn profile maybe on our show notes so that people, if they have questions about the Conduit or the Family Business Network or about all the things that you work on, can they reach out to you? Is that okay for you?
100%. I'd be delighted to hear from anyone. And thanks to you and also to your listeners for finding this conversation valuable enough to stay until this point. I'm very humbled and honored, and thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And we'll speak again next year for sure. We might speak in between, who knows?
Yes.
And thank you again for being part of the Design to Change podcast, Merat.
Thank you.
You've been hanging out backstage on Design to Change Designer Conversations. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe and share conversations online using hashtag Design to Change and hashtag Event Canvas. Want more thought-provoking content like this? Visit designtochange.online to purchase your copy of Design to Change, elevating your abilities to look and act beyond the now. Don't forget, it's more than just a book. Experience a hard copy, audio format, video format, and even augmented reality. Experience it in your style and format. Tune into our next episodes and hear from more designers and change makers. Until then, we look forward to our next conversation.